1 week, that's all it took. Maryann was engaged and her life changed forever. Be sure to hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to hear more content similar to this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Maryann again. When I met you last time, I told you I was going to tell you about my being 80 and what it's like. But first, I was giving you a little insight into what it was like in my growing years. And I think we pretty much described my growing years from being small until I graduated from high school. Now, in my day, you didn't get to go to college unless you were really wealthy. And as I explained to you last time, I did not come from a wealthy family, and my parents couldn't afford to pay for it. So either I worked and earned it, or I had to find another way. Well, I chose to go to work at the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company in Milwaukee because it's downtown Milwaukee, and I know they have a branch of our university there. And I felt I could go to university in after hours and do my thing, as they say, which I did, because at that time I thought I really wanted to become an English teacher. Little did I know how life was going to do to change it for me, that I would never have that opportunity. But in fact, I had a better one. I was young. I was 19 years old when I chose to get married to my husband. He and I met over at Cherry Pie. He was an extremely good-looking man who had an invitation from the Northwestern to come on down and interview with him. When I say come on down, I must tell you that he was from Marquette, Michigan, way up there in the Upper Peninsula. So for him to come to Milwaukee was quite a ride. But they wanted to interview him for a position there. Well, as part of the deal, I was working there, and I was doing, I think you would probably call it Girl Friday work. That's what I was doing at the time. And my desk sat very close to the boss. And I would have to set things up or run around and get him what he needed and just little things like that. But one day he handed me this form, and it said that Mr. Brian DeRoche was going to be coming, and he said it was only right that I arranged to have a desk put in front of my desk and prepare it so that Brian could have a home base, which is what I did. And I read 5'10", hazel brown eyes. Oh, I got all kinds of ideas about that. And when he showed up, I was dumbstruck. I couldn't even talk. He was so pretty to look at. But I kept on to my everyday life. During the week that he was here, I thought I'd make his acquaintance. And after work one evening, one of the girls heard me talk. And she said, well, today is Wednesday. Isn't your job on Wednesday to bake for your family? And I said, it sure is. I think tonight I'm going to make pies. And he turned around in that chair so fast and said, what kind of pies are you making? And I said, I don't know. What kind of pies do you like? And he said, if you'll bake me a cherry pie, I'll take you out for lunch. Well, now that was certainly a proposition I couldn't resist. So that night when I baked pies, I made an extra one, only I made his extra special. I took time to make all this pretty lattice work on it and sprinkle it in sugars and so forth. But it was a beautiful pie. And the next morning when he came into work, he saw on his desk, there sat this beautiful cherry pie. Well, needless to say, he said, well, I owe you one. And that weekend, it was my sister's birthday, August 23rd. He said, come on, we're going to go out tonight. And we did. Needless to say, my parents were kind of surprised by this because at the time I was very serious with two other fellows. One, in fact, had asked me to marry him how many times. But we were young, and I didn't really want that. Besides, I didn't have that same feeling I had for Brian. Well, Brian not only took me out, but by the end of the week, he was taking me home every night from work in his car. And on Friday, he asked me to marry him. So I figured 5 days is kind of a record, at least in my family. So we went to tell my parents. Oh my, there was real hell to pay. These words stuck in my head. if you're going to live in my house, you're going to do things my way. And I said to them, well, I don't have to live here. I can get an apartment elsewhere. I mean, I knew that I was in love with this guy after a week, and he was in love with me. So every time my parents would sit down with us and try to talk us out of getting married that time, wait for a year, wait for 6 months, my husband would keep moving the date closer, not farther away. And it finally got to the part where here we are about August the 28th, and he tells my parents, he says, what is your anniversary date? And they told him they were married on the 20th of November. He said, that's fine. We'll get married on the 21st of November. And we did. Mm-hmm. And my parents said it would never last. Well, we were young, but it lasted for 58 years. Mm. So I would say we really knew what we were doing. But at the time, I couldn't see it, the forest through the trees. I just thought, yeah, we know we love each other. Let's get married. Well, we did. We had 2 beautiful children. I had a son first, and he was born on the 15th of November the following year. And 2 years later, my daughter, Sam, who is just, she puts a sparkle in my face every time I think about her because I just smile. She's such a wonderful human being. And that was going to be the focus of my life. We built a brand new home, and that was when Tommy was still a baby. And it was kind of funny because it was our first home, but it was going to be a special home. We brought trees down from Marquette, Michigan, so that we'd have a connection with Brian's past. And my future was with my family. Everything was going smoothly. We enjoyed it so much, our married years. And lo and behold, one day, watching my husband work very hard in our backyard because we worked on a really tight budget, I said to myself, why am I sitting around just taking care of children? I should be out there helping him. And I'm going to go down to the store in town, and I'm going to offer my services. Maybe they'll hire me to work in the evening when he's home, and I can make a financial contribution to Brian, which would help us get the grass and the flower and the lawn, all the things that we needed to get our house going. And so lo and behold, that's what I did. I went down to the corner grocery store. I asked for a job. They gave me one. And I brought home $15 a week. And I was so proud of those $15. In so doing, I set up the next portion of my life. We had a bulletin board in the back where people would ask for lawn cutters or whatever it would be, where they needed help. And the local Avon lady put a note up on the board that she was looking for an Avon person to service the area. Well, I called my sister Claudia, and I asked her about this because she had been an Avon lady. And she warned me that you had to buy a kit to be an Avon lady, and that would cost me $8. Well, that was going to be like climbing Mount Everest because we had a $15 a week budget for food. And I thought to myself, oh, how will I ever save up enough? Because what we have is just enough for our food. Well, I managed to do it and did not tell my husband because I was concerned. He wanted me to stay home with Tommy and, at that time, little Sam. And I said to myself, we got to come to an agreement on this. Well, I went out to sell Avon the first day. My husband didn't know where I was. I took the 2 children with me in the stroller, and I came home at lunchtime, and I realized that I had made a profit of close to $200 the first morning. Wow. And so I called him. I knew the boxes would be coming from the UPS man, and I had to explain what I was doing. And I felt so dishonest, but I called him at lunchtime and said, Brian, I got to tell you what I've done. And I told him, and his sentence to me back was, what are you doing home? Mm. And I said, well, I brought the children home to feed them, but I would like to keep selling Avon. And he said, you just go right ahead. Well, it turned out to be a big moment in my life because I sold so much Avon in the first 2 weeks of my Avon career that the company called me and asked if they could send somebody to be with me while I was doing my selling. They had a training department and they wanted to see what I was doing because I was selling so much. Well, it was just a natural thing to me. I enjoyed it. I loved my neighbors. My neighbors loved my children. And I just had so much fun with this. I would ring their doorbell. They knew I was coming. And they'd say, what do you have for me today? Mm-hmm. And I'd say, well, today we're going to scrub our faces. Can you get us a bowl of water, some soap, and a couple towels? And we'd do this. And before the visit was over with, she'd be buying a whole raft of skincare products that she enjoyed so much that she'd order them again. And that went on for almost 2 years. Avon kept coming to me, asking me if I could take a managerial position. Well, on one day, we finally, after much talking about it, agreed that we would do this. They would move my family, and they moved my family to Mayville, Wisconsin. A little tiny burg was probably 150, 60 people who lived in this. And we lived on Short Street, so that should tell you everything. 4 houses and we were on Short Street. Well, that was a good deal because I took care of other people. I did exactly what they had trained me to do. They sent me to Chicago. I went training for several weeks. I came back and I did everything I was trained to do. And it was never work. It was always enjoyment. I saw everybody I met. I always welcomed them. They always welcomed me in their home. And I would train these women. And it was lovely. And after 2 years, they came to me again and asked me if I would come in to their home office and work. One thing led to another. And down the road, about 5 years after I first paid that initial $8, I found myself sitting in the home office. And I knew I was on my way. The things you don't know is that Avon products, although they had female agents, they had been a 100 and plus year old company. They were all independent contractors. That means they're really not employees of the company, but they are working with the company. That was for the people who were representatives. I moved in 2 years from being a representative / district manager to top management level, where all my compatriots were men. And I mean all men. I can count on my hand 2 women, and I was one of the 2. So we felt very lucky to be in such what they considered at the time the glass ceiling world. It was very hard, but I expected it to be because they don't give those jobs away for nothing. And I was good at it. I was better than any of the men. I had 26 years with them. They were good years. I enjoyed every one. I had 7,000 employees when I left. Wow. And I'm happy to say that even as I'm 80 years old, on my birthday, they still send me Christmas cards and birthday cards. And I can tell you it was a 2-way street. I respected them, and they loved me, and it was wonderful. I was lucky enough that we built our home. We were able to remove our mortgage after 4 years of my working, and it was really the help I had wanted to give my husband, because he really needed to find his passion. He was very good at what he did for Northwestern. He rose to an executive position, but he wanted to be outside. He wanted to have a career that would put him outside. And because he had built a home for his parents when he was 16 years old, he wanted to be an architect. He wanted to build homes for people. And so he said to me laughingly one day, when you earn more than me, I want you to know I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start a new career. And he did. He started a new career, and he built beautiful homes for people. Beautiful homes, 3,000, 4,000 square feet, lovely things. He enjoyed his life, and I enjoyed seeing him be happy. So that's what I did for the second part of my life. And whambo, I turned 50. And my husband said, now we retire. So we retired, and we moved to the Villages, Florida, where we have found faith and family and community, and it's another extension on my journey. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. Next time we get together, I'm going to tell you about being 80 and retired. Have a good day.